I hope you can see my screen. Um, it's just some block diagrams and blocks in green, etc., etc. So if anybody can't see my screen, let me know. Okay, so I hope everybody can see my screen and hear my voice. So let's continue with this something called as a life cycle. So life cycle, as the name indicates, like the life cycle of a human being, like he will be a toddler or a kid or a child. He becomes a teenager, adult, and he becomes old and dies. So that's called the life cycle of a human being. So a thread in Java also have a life cycle. At some point when the program is running, the thread will start. It will start running. At some point of time, it might stop or it might gets blocked, or we can say it will suspend temporarily. It will resume again. It will start running again, and once it finishes the task that it wants to do, it will stop and becomes dead. That is the normal life cycle of a thread. So we have some states, or you might have studied about the state concept in your LCD classes, logic circuit design classes, the state machine concept. So similar to that, we have something called as a state in our thread also. So don't want to go into very detailed about how the state is working and what all things are happening in the state. We just want to look at an overview of what are the possible states in a thread, and how the switching between the states happening, like what is the condition of switching, etc., etc. So as you can see from the diagram, all these green blocks are actually our states of a thread. So the first state is called as a newborn state, when the thread is just started, and there's a state called as runnable, there's a state called as running, there's a state called as blocked, and there's a state called as dead. So these are the 5 states a thread can move into while its lifetime. Okay. Now we are going to see how each state can be switched, or how the thread can move from one state to another. Okay. The first and foremost state is called as a newborn state. So newborn state means when you create a thread, it is called as a newborn state. Actually, these states are implemented in the operating system. So when you start or when you create a thread, the operating system will put that thread in the newborn state. So in the newborn state, for example, when you declare a class, in the last class we have seen, we can declare a class with a thread by saying class A space thread. The thread is the class name which is implemented in Java. So when you do that, you are actually just creating a thread, but it is not running. Okay, so it is not yet running, for not yet scheduled for run. So from this newborn state, it is possible that somebody can call a stop and the thread can become dead. That is possible. Okay, so for example, a thread is started or a thread has been declared, but due to the conditions or environments in the program, you don't want the thread to run, so you can just directly move to the dead state. Okay, or another option is I want the thread to run, so that you can move that into a runnable state. This is a runnable state. This is not a running state. Runnable means the thread is ready to run. Okay. So once you are in the runnable state, you are basically waiting for the operating system to make you run. There will be multiple number of threads in this runnable state. Okay, because at any point of time, the operating system will allow to run only a limited number of threads. For example, let's say you have 1,000 threads. Okay. But the operating system might be configured to run only 100 threads at a time. So what you do is you put the 900 threads in the runnable state. So that when the condition comes, the thread can move to the running state and run. Okay. So in the runnable state, it is basically a waiting state where the thread will wait for the operating system to schedule it so that it can run. Okay. So, and it is possible that some threads which are in the block state, which we will see in the future slides, it can also come to the runnable state. We'll see an instance of that. We'll see how that is happening. Okay. So this is runnable state, a running state. So this is where the actual action is happening. So here, actually the thread is running. Okay, the thread starts to run. So if the OS can at a time can run 100 threads, 100 threads will be running. So whatever output the thread is giving will be available in this state. Okay, but let's say a thread is running. Okay, it has reached some point, and at this point it needs some kind of a input from the user. For example, a thread is running, and to continue its run you need to press the key, let's say A, in the keyboard. Only after user presses A, then only the thread will move or continue running. So in that case, the thread need to wait for the user to press a key A. So the thread will not know when the user is going to press. Sometimes nobody will be there in front of the keyboard, and thread will need to wait for a very long time. So if the thread is in running state, it is waiting there, then it is actually hindering another thread for running, because you can run only a fixed number of threads. So what the operating system does is, if such a situation occurs, the operating system will move that thread to a state called as wait block, or a wait state. Okay, and in this block state, the thread will still wait for the user to press the key A. Okay, this is done by calling the suspend or sleep or wait, any of these functions. So this is called as a running state. The running state is a state in which the thread is blocked or thread is running, and if the thread needs any input which needs waiting, then it will be moved to the blocking state. You can also move to a runnable state, because it might happen that thread might have finished running and it needs to start running again. So it can move to a runnable state. Or there is something called as a preemption. I don't know whether you have studied in embedded system. There is something called as priority and preemption in this thread. So if a higher priority thread comes, then the lower priority thread will move to the runnable state, and the higher priority thread will keep on running. So I don't know whether it is there in your embedded system syllabus, but that's something called as a preemption. That's called as a preemption. That is possible in this condition. Now, block state. So block state is a state where the thread is waiting for some kind of an input outside of its running path. For example, let's say an application needs to write something in a particular memory address, which the thread needs to read. If the application hasn't written that, then the thread will be waiting for the application to write on that memory address. Okay, that is one possibility. Other possibility is, as I said earlier, the thread might be waiting for the user to give some input. So in that case, it cannot run. It can run only after the user gives the input. So that can happen only if the user gives the input and the thread cannot be in running state, then the operating system will put in the block state. So the thread is prevented from entering into runnable state or running state. Okay, if it is waiting for some event, or is suspended, or is put under sleep. So thread can also put under sleep. Sleep means that let's say I have scheduled a thread to run every 10 milliseconds. Okay, and the thread എല്ലാ 10 മില്ലി സെക്കൻഡിന് റൺ ചെയ്യാൻ പാടുള്ളൂ. അപ്പൊ അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ ഈ 10 മില്ലി സെക്കൻഡ് സമയം അത് സ്ലീപ്പിലായിരിക്കും. So you can put on the sleep. Okay. Now once the thread gets the input or gets out of that waiting state, then it will go to the runnable state by calling any of this function, which is resume or notify. Okay. And you should understand that if the thread is in block state, it is not dead. It is not yet dead. But it can be made to dead if you call the function stop. This is the block state. The last is called as a dead state. So dead state is where the thread has been terminated. So it can come from either directly from the running state to dead, block state to dead, or newborn state to dead. So running state to dead means the thread has finished its execution, so it will go to the dead state. Block state to dead means that there might be some time expiration after which the thread will automatically move to dead state, and newborn state we have already said. So these are the possible states or possible transitions between the states when you are having multi-threaded programming in Java. Now, apart from that, there is something called a thread priority. Now, what should be the criteria for the operating system to put a thread into the running state? Okay, so whenever we create a thread in Java, it always has some priority assigned to it. And there is a value assigned to priority from between 1 to 10. So minimum priority means the value is 1. Normal priority is value is 5. Maximum priority is value is 10. So we assign a priority value for the thread. If it is a safety critical application, then the priority value will be maximum. Okay. And if it is a routine application, just like, for example, you're opening a Word file and writing, and let's say that's a thread, then you will assign minimum priority, because writing in a Word file doesn't, even if you write or don't write, it will not impact or affect anything else. Okay. But if it is some, let's say your system is connected to, or the system is actually your pacemaker, the one which is put inside your heart, or which is put as a heart in your body. Okay, so if there is a problem or if anything bad happens, it should immediately be addressed. That should be highest priority, because if there is some problem, then it can affect a life. Okay, so that's how we judge the priority. So the importance of priority is, so during this thread lifecycle, there will be multiple threads in the runnable state, so waiting for the running state. So the Java system will execute the thread with the maximum priority. Okay? Only when this maximum priority thread is dead or goes to sleep or goes to block state, then only the lower priority thread can run. Okay, and this part is important. If a lower priority thread is in the running state, and if another thread of higher priority comes along, means it wants to execute, the currently running thread will be preempted by the high priority thread. Preempted means it will be stopped, and one that has come will start running, and the lower priority thread will be moved to the running state. So higher priority thread will always come in between the lower priority thread if it has lower priority. So you can also set the priority by following functions in Java. This is public final integer priority, public final void set priority. So you can set the priority for each of the threads. So we have seen till now how we can create a thread using thread class. Now there is a different way to create a thread, that is by using a runnable interface. We have seen what an interface is. Okay? There's an interface defined in Java which is called as runnable. So if you implement that interface and declare the function run whose definition has what you want to do, then it will run as a separate thread. Example, class X is a class that you declare. Now this class is going to implement the interface called as runnable. So you see that runnable is an interface. Now this interface is already defined inside the Java program or Java system. And in this interface, they have also declared a method called as run. So if you are implementing the runnable interface, then you should define the method run inside your class. So this is your thread. Okay. So you have implemented the run interface. Now, after that, you create a object of the class. Okay. This is called as run number X. After creating the object, you create the object of the thread class. And you pass the object of the class that you have created to the constructor of the thread class. And then it will create a thread for the class X, and you can start by calling the object dot start. Okay. So this is a bit more similar when you compare to that of our previous implementation. Okay. So you can start the thread by thread the object dot start. And it will run. Now there is something called as inter-thread communication. You see that there are multiple threads running in parallel. There will be thread number 1, thread number 2, and thread number 3. So this is thread number 1, 2, and 3. So 3 threads might be running in parallel. Now what if these two threads need to communicate between each other? Means, for example, this thread might have a variable called as a, which has a value equal to 1. And the thread number 2 needs to access this uh, variable a. How will it access? Okay, so that's why we have something called as an inter-thread communication. Now, Java implements inter-thread communication using these 3 functions: notify, notify all, and wait. Notify means, for example, a thread went to sleep, and then if notify function of a thread is called, it will just wake up. Or if you want to wake up all the threads, you can just call notify all. If you want to send some thread to sleep state, you can call the wait. Okay. So this is called as the multi-threaded programming in Java. If you have any doubts on this, please let me know. We can clarify this now and we'll move to the next session. There have been asked many questions in the final semester examination regarding Java threads. It's the most commonly asked questions. So please make yourself clear of what this is before we move to the next topic. So if you have any questions, you can ask. Or else we'll move to the last topic of Java, which is exception handling. Any questions? So if you don't have any questions, let's move on to the next presentation. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen. So this lecture is about managing errors and exceptions. When you compile Java code or when you compile any type of code, you will encounter errors. Errors means, for example, you might have just forgotten to put a semicolon. That's an error. And apart from that, you can also, in your code, when you write the code, it is possible that you might divide a number by 0. That is called an exception. Okay. The first one is called as an error. The second one is called as an exception. Now, these two things will cause a problem in your program. For example, if it's an exception, you might have written the program assuming that the program will work very fine, and you might not have considered the situation in which there is a division by 0, but it can happen in which there is a division by 0. So what you will do in your program to automatically uh, rectify this exception? Your program should run anyway, whether the exception occurs or not. If an exception occurs, usually the program will crash, but you should be able to dynamically or automatically find the exception in your program and rectify it and move forward without stopping the program. So how will you do this? So that is where managing errors and exceptions will come. So before we move on to discuss how to solve exceptions, let's see what are the types of errors. So first type of error is called as a compile time error. Okay. Error which is occurring during compilation. As we have seen in C++, in Java also there is a part of a compilation by the interpreter. So that type of error is called as a compilation. For example, in this code, you have missed a semicolon here. So if you compile this code, it will give an error. This is called as a compile time error. So other possible errors are, one is missing semicolon. You might have missed the brackets in classes and methods, or you might have misspelled keywords. For example, instead of int, you might have written integer. Instead of float, you might have, instead of FLOAT float, you might have written FLAOT. So all these things, it comes under misspelling. Or you might have missed the double quotes when you write system.out.println of hello world. You might have not put the double quotes. You might have used undeclared variables. The assignments might not be incompatible or might be incompatible. Bad reference to objects. For example, we have seen pointers. You might not have assigned the pointer to refer to any object. Use of equal to in place of double equal to. For example, if you're doing if, comparing if A and B, instead of A double equal to B, you might have just put A equal to B. So these are all compile term errors. When the compiler combines all these errors, it will show you that there is an error. There is another type of error called as runtime errors. Okay, so the program will compile successfully, but it will not run properly. For example, your program might be to print the values from 1 to 10. Instead, what it does is it might have print the values from 2 to 9. So that's a runtime error. Okay, so these programs will produce wrong results due to wrong logic or terminate due to errors such as stack overflow. Okay, so these are all possible runtime errors. So common runtime errors are, most common is division by 0. And if you have an array means that we have not looked at array. So array means, assume that this is a memory location. Okay, when you declare a variable, one memory location will be assigned to you. If you declare an array, for example, int a of 10. So this is how you declare an array. A in square brackets 10. When you declare an array like this, what the system does is it will allocate 10 memory locations for you, which are continuous, means adjacent memory locations of 10 will be allocated for you. Okay, and you can access each memory location by saying, let's say a of 0 means it is the first memory location. So this means that you are accessing the first memory location. A in square bracket 1 means you are accessing the second memory location. And if you say A in square bracket of 9, it means that you are accessing the last memory location. There is no A square bracket of 10. That is an error. So index out of bounds of array. So basically you have declare an array of 10 memory locations, but let's say you are trying to access like A of 100. That is not possible because you have only allocated 10 memory locations. You are trying to access the 100 memory location, which is not possible. This is called as integer out of bounds of array. This integer is out of the boundary of the array. Okay. Now, trying to store a value into an array of incompatible class or type. So you see that this array of is of type int. Now, instead of this, if you try to, so basically each memory location can store only integer value. Instead of this, you might move a floating point value into this array. That is not possible. That is a runtime array. Trying to cast an instance of a class to one of its subclasses. So casting means you are trying to modify one class so that it can fit into another class. Trying to illegally change the state of a thread. Attempting to use negative size of the array. So array size, if you look at this one, the array size is 10. And always the array size is a positive integer. If you try to declare an array as, let's say, a of -5, that is not possible because the array size cannot be negative. So that is what is called as negative size of an array. Converting invalid string to a number. For example, if the string is 9 like this, then this is equivalent to the number 9. Let's say if the string is a, is it equivalent to any number? Can you convert this to any number? It is not possible because a means it is an alphabet. It is not equivalent to any number. Okay, so that is another one. Accessing a character that is out of bounds of a string. So the string might be, for example, ABC. You are trying to access the 6th element of the string. It is not possible. So all these are called as runtime errors. Now, exception is an unwanted event that interrupts the normal flow of the program, mainly caused by runtime error. So your program is running. At some point, let's say there's a division by 0, which you didn't see this. Now, this is interrupting the normal flow of the program. This is called as an exception. So what you should do to handle the exception is first find the problem, that is called as hit the exception, inform that an error has occurred, that is called as throw, receive the error, that is called as catch, and take corrective action, that is called as handle. So hit, throw, catch, handle is the flow in which you need to handle the exception. So this slide lists some of the comparisons between errors and exceptions. Errors is you cannot recover from an error if you're running, like, unless and until you stop the program, you cannot recover, but you can actually recover from the exception. There is something called as unchecked and checked exceptions. We'll see that errors can only be unchecked and errors occurs at runtime. Exception can occur at compile time or runtime. This is errors are caused by application running environment and exceptions by applications. Okay. Now, this is the list of possible exceptions that can occur. Arithmetic exception, for example, division by 0. So this is a keyword actually, arithmetic exception. Similarly, array index out of bounds exception means you are trying to access an array or a particular location of array outside the length of the array. Class not found exception. You are trying to access a class which is not defined. File not found exception. You are trying to access a file which is not created. IO exception. You are trying to read something from an external device, but it is not interfaced. Interrupted exception. For example, it is basically concerned with thread. When a thread is waiting or sleeping or doing some processing, it gets interrupted. That is called as interrupted exception. No such field exception. For example, in a class, you might have declared a variable, or you might not have declared a variable, but in the using the object of the class, you are trying to access that variable which is not declared. So this is called as a no such field exception. So all these are the different types of exceptions that is already programmed in the Java system. Okay, you can make use of this exception to correct your program. There are two types of exception. One is called as check exception. Occurs at compile time. It's also called as compile time exceptions. So if some code within a method throws a check exception, then the method must either handle the exception or it must specify the exception using throws keyword. Okay, we'll see an example so that you will understand it much better. There's an unchecked exception that will occur at the time of execution. Okay, this is called as runtime exceptions. So the programmer needs to specify or catch the exception. Okay, so let's see the keywords. So these are all called as keywords. One is called as try, catch, finally, throw, throws. This we will do in the program itself. So there is something called as a try block in which we will put the code which you might feel that there can exception can occur. This is called as try block. And if the exception is occurred, what you will do with that will be put in the catch block. And finally, it's like a default thing. If exception doesn't occur, then it will execute finally. Throw means you can throw a custom-made exception. Okay, similarly, throws. We'll see an example. So this is how you handle an exception. You have a try block, and inside the try block, you will put a statement that causes an exception. So if the exception occur, it will be caught inside the catch block, and you will write a statement which you can handle that exception. Let's say an example. Okay, so this is a class called as Java exception example. You have a main function. So you have a try block here, because you know that when you do this, definitely an exception will be thrown. Okay, so if an exception occurs, what the control does is it will go to the catch block and it will print this. Okay, so you see that there's a catch something here. We are catching an arithmetic exception. 100 by 0 is an arithmetic exception. So that will be caught by this catch block, and it will print this, and it will go to the next line. If we haven't done any try or catch, and if this particular code is executed, the Java system will get hang. Okay. So when you compile this code itself, you can see the result. So this is a try block. So this is the code which can possibly throw an exception. This is a catch block. So if an exception is done, then this catch block will catch it. And what type of exception it will catch? It will catch an arithmetic exception. Okay, for example, division by 0. And it will execute whatever there is inside the catch block. Okay? And you can have any number of catch statements or catch blocks after each try. For example, whatever code you write here might be throwing an arithmetic exception, array index out of bound exception, etc., etc. So you can have one here as arithmetic exception where you can catch division by 0. Another one here where array index out of bound exception, where it is trying to access a array value which is out of its bounds. Okay, this is an example. You have a class called as sample multiple catch block. You have a main function. You see that you have two code written here. This is division by 0, which is not possible. It gives an exception. And you're trying to access the 6th element of the array because you have declared only 5 elements. So this is another exception. So this exception will be caught by this catch block, which is arithmetic exception. This exception will be caught by this catch block, which is array index out of bound exception. Okay, and it will come out and print the last statement. So you can have any amount of code here and any amount of catch blocks here, so that whichever exception is handling, the corresponding catch block will catch. So this is a try block. This is for catching arithmetic exceptions. This is for catching array index out of bound exceptions. And this is for catching other exceptions. So if the array is indexed out of bounds, then the second catch block will be called. Okay, and for 30 by 0, the first catch block will be called. So there can be also something called as a finally block. Means it contains all the crucial statements that must be executed whether an exception occurs or not. Whether there is an exception in this try block or not, this block will execute. And you should remember that this catch blocks will execute only if there is an exception which is being made in the try block. But the finally block will execute even if there is no exception. Okay. It is used to handle an exception that is not caught by any of the previous catch. So let's say you have listed many catch statements here. Okay. And the exception that is being thrown from this try block doesn't have a matching catch statement. So what it does is it will go to the finally block. Okay. This is an example. You have a try statement 55 divided by 5. Okay. You see that these two are perfectly okay programs. So it will not go to this, but instead it will directly go to the finally block and it will execute finally the block is executed. Okay. And it will come out executing the last bit. This is regarding the finally block. So this block will not generate any exception. So it will directly come to the finally block and it will execute the finally block. Okay. Fine. So we will stop it here. There's a bit more small portion remaining, which I think I'll look at it. I think there is only 4 slides, but still I will do it in the next class. I think it is on Monday. Okay. So do you have any doubts regarding whatever I have explained regarding exception handling? So please go through these slides. I think the slides are pretty self-explanatory. This is all these slides are the thing that you need to write your semester exam. If you want to do the programming, as I said earlier, you can download all those applications and try out these programs. Okay. But unless and until you try it out, it will not